is Inner Mastery, Outer Impact, how your five core energies hold the key to success. Um, I've had, a deep hunger in my life for success. I am sure I'm not alone. And I got compelled to doing this work, which has now been 15 years in the making, through my teachings at Columbia, the work that we do at my Mentora Institute, because I struggled with this dichotomy, between on the one side wanting the acclaim and applause and approval of the world, whether it's the family or society or the organization I work for and beyond. And on the other hand, also wanting, that same kind of sense of applause for my own self, wanting to be true to myself and my own inklings and stirrings from within. And I call that inner success versus outer success. And what the book is seeking to do is really offer, in a sense, a provocative thesis that, that these two don't have to be in conflict at all. That when you approach them the right way, the inner and the outer, you come to this beautiful point of confluence where all of your life, the inner, the outer, the private, the public, the professional and the personal, just seems to all emerge out of this central construct, of my work, which is this notion of your inner core. I initially started to teach at Columbia something I called personal leadership, and the idea was that before you learn to inspire others and influence others and, change others and turn others around in moments of adversity. How about learning to inspire yourself and influence yourself and, turn your own life around in times of adversity and change yourself? And, that was the, kind of the main idea of the class. And then what I realized through my early conversations is that it was always coming back to this one thing that people were saying, Professor, I'm really finding it so helpful that you're guiding me towards my own core, guiding me, and I was like, wait a second, it's not your core. It's like these broader principles. But as the class has evolved and as my research has evolved and my own personal journey has evolved, I've realized how right the students were. They say when one teaches, two learn. And that's certainly what it's been like for me. And so what's emerged from that is this idea that within each of us lies at the very essence of our spirit, our inner core. And that's a space from where our highest potential arises. When we are at that place, then we are beyond ego and attachments and insecurities. And I didn't want the book and my work to only be focused on the inner if it wasn't also going to be able to inform and guide us on the outer. All my studies of figures from history, who are iconic and luminous in many ways, and the footprints they've left in the sands of time, like a Gandhi or a Mother Teresa or an Abraham Lincoln. What you find is from this science and these studies of these iconic figures is that they or we will do our best outer work when we do our best inner work. We play our best outer game when we learn to play our best inner game, because when we are making it a habit and a commitment and a discipline to be anchored in our core, then we are free from impulses and habits and personality and just the in the moment surges of emotions and the limiting confines of a mindset or a belief that is in some way self-defeating. We can be liberated from that. We can transcend these to be able to see the truth in situations in a fuller light, to be able to choose our response, with much more conscious awareness and a deep commitment to our purpose. And in doing that, also be deeply connected, with life around us, with nature around us, with the people that we are working with and the people we are serving. So we have this dual kind of both connection deep with our own, core, and at the same time, we are free to also tune in to the nuances of the world around us. And that's, to me, really the secret to enduring success in life. I want to remind us of something, right? So 200 years ago, only 15% of the world was literate, could read and write, right? Versus today, where it's 85% is literate, right? If you go back 200 years and you ask those, 15% people, why is the rest of the world not literate? Why are you so privileged and they're not? Like, do we think that they would have said, oh, it's because we got lucky, we're the aristocrats, we have the opportunity to actually get access to this education, and they don't? Most likely they would have said, we're a selective, group of, people with very special genes. And we all know that that's, not true at all. It's completely innate in the human condition to ultimately be literate, under the right conditions. It was always there. And I would just offer in the same way that it's actually innate in all of us, that purity, that commitment, that, calmness and centeredness that, that I claim, is what is, there at our core, that perhaps we haven't fully awoken to it. We haven't really cultivated the pathways to getting there. On the one hand, we have progressed in such beautiful ways over the last few hundred years, coming from a much more constricted world, a conformist oriented world, to one where we have, struggled for and really, won, freedom, right? To feel, think, express, consume, whatever it is that we wanted, thinking that in that lay our salvation, in that lay the pursuit of our authentic self, right? And instead, where do we find ourselves? At a point where society is, kind of hardly united, right? It's so divided in so many ways. In that pursuit of freedom, right? What we have not realized is that if to be true to ourselves, we have to first discover what our true self is. What is our self? Within me, there are many selves. And when I realize I have all these competing selves, then my first responsibility becomes to discover what it is that my true self is. And only then, once I anchor in that self, have I earned the right to flow freely with my thoughts and feelings and and impulses, because I'm anchored in my true self. Once our world opens itself up to the fact that freedom is a beautiful thing, untethering ourselves from very conformist kind of ideals is a very beautiful thing. And at the same time, with those rights come the responsibilities to discover our true voice, our true self within, and then pursue certain step-by-step disciplines through which we harmonize our thoughts and our feelings and our impulses and values, so that they're all in service of, the expression of our core in everything we do. There is no such thing as a self-made woman or man. At the end of the day, there is interdependency. There is inner connections between us and the rest of the universe, certainly the community and the people around us. And so if you just kind of recognize that, and you realize that, look, at every level of nature, from cellular to like organs in the body to like planets out there, there is that interchange going on. Each is helping support the overall stability of the system and the flourishing of the system. And the system then feeds it back to making each individual element get to the highest individual potential, unique and special potential of its own. In my body, for example, my heart, my lungs, and my brain, they're selflessly doing their part of the work. But like, if they ever started to kind of like, try to get to feel a little egoistical and a little bit sort of like, wait a second, like, why am I pumping all this blood to you guys? Hey, listen, anoint me in a position of power and put me on the throne and reward me. The lungs would say, oh yeah, well then I'm going to stop bringing in oxygen. And the brain might say something like, oh yeah, like what if I just stop giving intelligent instructions to the rest of the body? And, what would we want to tell each of these organs? Wouldn't we want to say, hey, listen, selflessly give and be deeply connected. And yes, protect your own interests by taking in some of the blood, taking in some of the oxygen to nourish yourself as well. But there's enough here for all of us. And when we actually give and take a little bit and tune into others' needs as well, in that sense of like selfless service, we actually become the best versions of ourselves. When you face the dichotomy between the inner and the outer, that struggle, the tension point, to realize that in that there might be a message there, for you about what kind of a shift or change or patience or grace you may need to show in that conversation, in that relationship, or in the struggle you're having. My book is about life, but really in many ways it's about leadership. It's about showing up in life, with that quest to bring out the best in yourself and bring out the best in others in all situations. And that's really, in a sense, what we seek and expect from our leaders and organizations. But in some ways, it's something that any or all of us can take on in any of our pursuits in life. Just think about one thing, which is to bring out the best in them and the best in yourself in the pursuit of a common positive purpose, whatever that common positive purpose is. And that purpose could be something about getting to a great outcome in a meeting. It could be about launching a project the right way. It could be about advancing the organization's cause more broadly over the course of time. Whatever the common positive purpose is, how can you bring out the best in them and the best in yourself, which means activate them at their core and activate yourself at their core. And what I've discovered by studying some of these exemplary leaders, over time, as well as moments of exemplary leadership from just like everyday heroes, unsung people who were just like doing remarkable things moment by moment. What I've discovered from studying them, and the book is replete with just a number of these stories, is that they were actually pursuing a very, very simple path, a very personal path that was very personal to them. And it involved them being very sensitive about expressing these energies. They wanted to make sure there was purpose in that conversation, that there was love in that conversation, there was wisdom in that conversation. And to do that, they would just pick from a handful of actions, simple actions, a handful of actions. For example, if love was being a little compromised because the feeling of warmth in the relationship was getting to be sidelined with the conflict that was happening in a different point of view between people, they might infuse that moment with affiliation, finding some common ground between them. And hey, you and I, we've been in this together, isn't it, for the last 2 years? And you remember that time when you did this and I did that? That's a way of them bringing in affiliation. We can open our organizations up to just humbly inviting the leaders to learn simple actions that are chosen personally by them moment by moment based on what they sense in that moment is most in need. Pay heed to your inner experience. What are the moments? What are the practices? What are the people that get you to feel most connected with the peace and the joy and the love and wisdom that exist at the very core of your being? Perhaps it's a walk in nature. Perhaps it's a moment where you feel very rested and refreshed, after a shower. Or when you feel really inspired in a team that is collectively with you pursuing a cause that you deeply, deeply, deeply believe in. Pay attention to that stirring within that makes you in that moment feel really inspired, feel really at the very core of your being. Now do this. Now ask yourself, well, how can I create this state on demand in the middle of like my daily battlefield, even in the midst of defeat or struggle? But you can pause, you can close your eyes, you can reactivate therefore that stirring and from within, and now seek to re-enter the fray of life from that state. Because although you may claim to have only gotten it when you were taking that walk in nature, or when you were interacting with that individual, or reading that inspiring passage in a book, that's not true. Those things are purely the catalyst from the outside. That state always exists in you from the inside. So my encouragement is, find what is that one action that seems to almost consistently take you there, and make that action something that, if nothing else, you can at least visualize in any moment where you feel the need to recenter. Take the responsibility to get yourself recentered. Recognize and monitor that I am not anywhere close to my core right now. And if that happens, it's not yet the right time for me to open up the computer and go into that Zoom meeting or walk into that other conversation. We're living in a complicated time today, and it's very hard to make always the right choice. And sometimes we may be able to lean on science, and sometimes we may be able to lean on experience, and sometimes we may be able to lean on faith. But I would offer to you, from my studies of great leaders from history, the one resource that never failed them was their own inner voice. And that is my one offering to you, and my exhortation to you, which is, let's all learn to cultivate an attunement with our inner voice. This is where the universe is ultimately whispering its secrets to us. And it's not an entitlement. It's not something that this is what I'm feeling like doing, and so therefore this is what my inner voice is saying. It is when we create that silence from the outside that our inner voice breaks its silence. As Lincoln once said, that I want to conduct the affairs of the world so that at the end of the day, even if I have no other friend left on earth, I have at least that one friend deep down inside of me. And I would say, in the kind of times we live in today, complicated times, perhaps that's my ultimate service and guidance to all of us, which is at the very, very center of the book as well, that your core speaks to you. Your core actually can guide you if you allow it to.